Hey, if you're looking to create a set of financial projections for a dermatology clinic, then you have come to the right place because we have built a financial projection template built specifically for a dermatologist office. And I want to walk you through how the template works, how to fill it out, and ultimately how to prepare to present this to potential investors and lenders. And so before I dive into the details of the template, just a little bit of background on me. My name's Adam Huxama. I'm the co-founder of Projection Hub, and we help entrepreneurs and founders and business owners create financial projections for all sorts of different industries and businesses, and ultimately helping you prepare to present to investors and lenders. In my background, I spent a little over a decade as the executive director of an SBA lender, where we approved over 1,500 SBA loans to a variety of industries and businesses before I really went full-time into my work here at Projection Hub. And so wanted to give you a little bit of context there about my background, and now just as a thank you for listening to the end of the video. It's really helpful for the YouTube algorithm if you are willing to listen to the end of the video. So as a thank you for doing that, we are going to give you access to a coupon code if you stick around to the end of the video. All right, so the next thing we want to do is just mention that in the description of the video here, you're going to be able to find a link to this particular template. So you can go ahead and grab the template and then follow along. All right, I think that's all the housekeeping out of the way. Let's go ahead and dive in. Okay, so this is kind of the end of the process. So after we have worked to create our projections, filled in our various assumptions, this is what you're going to get. You're going to come to an at-a-glance tab with a number of different high-level financials, some key ratios, summary data, annual sales charts, and whatnot. You're also going to have a 5-year income statement summary, a 5-year cash flow summary, a 5-year balance sheet summary, and then an income statement, cash flow, and balance sheet all broken down by month for each of the 5 years. Now, if you're looking for an SBA loan, they're typically going to ask you for the first 2 years broken down by month. Some lenders may ask for more, but I think at a bare minimum, you're going to at least need the first couple of years broken down by month. So this is going to meet that requirement. All right, so that's the deliverable. That's kind of the end of the process. In order to get there, we have a little bit of work to do. So let's jump over to our input assumptions tab. I'm going to walk you through how to fill this out. So the first thing you need to know is that any assumption that's in blue is an assumption that you can change without breaking something in the model. So you can put in your clinic's name here, the projection start month, and here you can put in your opening cash balance. If you're already operating or you've already invested some money into the business or already has some cash in the kind of business checking account, you can put that in here. Here you're going to put in investment. So this might be personal investment. This could be investment from outside investors. But again, if we're kind of using the SBA mindset here, you're probably going to need to put in at least 10% of the total project cost as personal investment. You're going to end up ultimately calculating how much you're going to need for the total project. You're probably going to want to assume that you're going to invest at least 10% of that here. On the accounts payable assumption here, you could probably just leave this as it is. The main idea here is that we're saying you're going to pay 80% of your bills in the month that you incur the expense and 20% on a delay. So this could be something like a utility bill where you incur the expense for the utility this month, you get billed at the beginning of the following month, and then you ultimately have 20 days to pay, 30 days to pay, that sort of thing. So this just impacts your cash flow. And then on the accounts receivable side, this average day sales outstanding, or the days to collect. So this is important if you are billing to insurance, for example. So let's say you provide the service today, then you bill insurance, and then it takes how many days to get paid after you bill insurance. So the assumption here we have, and here's a default, is 45 days. And this is the average number. So if you have a cash paying clients, they're going to bring down that average because they're paying on the day the service is provided. And so what you're looking for here is the average. So it could be that you have some cash paying clients, and then maybe the insurance is actually taking 50 days or 60 days, and we're kind of bringing it down to 45. But you can play around and adjust that, and that's ultimately going to have a big impact on your cash flow statement. So if we look in this column here, this is the first month of operation. We see cash from sales is 0. So even though we had sales, we can look at the income statement. We had $38,000 worth of sales in the first month based on these projections, but we received no cash because we're waiting to get paid, right? So that's where that assumption really comes into play. On the inventory side, you've got opening inventory. You could put in an amount that you think you'd need for opening inventory. And then this, I think you can also just leave at 10%. It's just helping make sure that you keep some basic amount of inventory on hand on the balance sheet in the business each month. Fixed assets. So here would be where you're going to put in, startup costs. So let's say you are renting a space, but it's going to need a kind of full remodel to get it ready for what you need. And so you've got a budget of $250,000 here for real estate improvements or leasehold improvements to build out the office, $80,000 medical equipment, $35,000 in furniture and fixtures for what you're planning on. And then down here we have our loan request. So we've got a $500,000 loan that we're looking at, assuming a 10% interest rate at 120 months or 10-year term. So this little box down here is something that you can take a look at, but you'll want to come back to it at the end of the projections and make sure that as you've changed things, that this little box here still says starting cash is sufficient. Now, I'd recommend that you finish the projections before you worry about what this box tells you, okay? Because it's going to change every time you change an assumption. And what often happens is in the middle of the process, maybe you've increased expenses, but you haven't increased revenue yet. What's going to happen is it's going to say months until cash flow positive. Maybe you never reach cash flow positive based on the numbers you have in there right now. It's going to break the model. It's going to say, okay, you never reach cash flow positive. It doesn't know what to do. This whole little green table just breaks. So don't worry about this until you've finished filling everything out. If you finish filling everything out and it's still saying starting cash is not sufficient, that's where you need to kind of work through and figure that out, okay? All right, let's look at our input revenue tab. Okay, so we're going to start with patient acquisition, and this example, for example's sake, let's say we're bringing 250 patients to this new practice, and maybe that's because you've been operating, a practice within another practice, and maybe you've had 1,000 patients, and you don't expect all of them to move over to your new clinic, but you think some of them will, and so that could be the type of thing that you would put in here. Patients that you think are going to move over kind of on day one, so you'll have some baseline of current active patients. If you're starting completely from scratch, you'd want to put 0 here. Advertising budget. So then we assume that you'll probably do some advertising to acquire new patients. So we've got a budget of $2,000 a month. We have a cost to acquire a new patient of $200. So this is just an estimate. This is going to be based on how good your marketing campaign and advertising campaign is. But the way we're looking at it, if you've got $2,000 ad budget, cost to acquire new patients $200, that's going to drive 10 new patients from paid ads. And then let's say maybe your primary source of new customers or new patients is organic word of mouth. Okay, so we're adding 25 new patients a month from organic word of mouth sources or referrals. So that gives us our total number of new patients here at 35 a month. We can set a maximum number of patients that we think we can have, basically what would your office, what would the building itself be able to support, So let's say you think you can support 1,000 active patients, and you think your clinic has the ability to have 2 dermatologists, two providers. So maybe 2,000 is the total you want to put in here for the maximum number of patients. And then this assumption is just the percentage of patients who leave each year or who stop coming back. And I might bump this up a little bit more because, I suspect that there's going to be some churn rate, that people come for a specific issue and then they don't come back. There are others that will probably continue to come on a regular basis, right? So I think it's prudent to have some amount of churn here or cancellation of customers. Okay, so once you have your number of active patients up here, Now we get into our services and pricing here. So the first line here, this is your initial consultation. So all new patients are going to automatically have this line. So let's just say you charge $125 for, an initial diagnostic exam consultation, right? And so that is going to be applied to each new patient each month there. Then the rest of these services, the way this is working is it is going to look at this average services per year per patient, okay? So if we look at, let's look at a hair loss treatment as an example. So let's say you offer a hair loss treatment that you offer is a $1,500 treatment. And what we're saying here, where it says 0.2 average services per patient per year, in other words, that means 20%. So 0.2, 20% of these patients are going to utilize your hair loss treatment service. Or the other way to think about this, it could be that only 10% of the patients actually utilize this service, but the ones that do use it twice. So then it'd be 0.1 times 2 times a year, gives you that 0.2 number here, right? So this is a little bit tricky to kind of think through, but just to kind of reiterate that, you can think about this as a percentage. So 0.25 get cosmetic injections. So 25% of these active patients are going to get a cosmetic injection once a year, or maybe a smaller percentage, but since they're getting multiple times per year, it adds up to this 0.25 number per year. So if you have any questions about that, or if you fill the model out and you want us to take a look at it, happy to do that. You can always email our support@projectionhum.com and submit your projections there, and we'll take a look and you can ask any questions, and we're happy to provide feedback on that. So this gives you ultimately kind of an idea of what's the average fee for a patient per year and how many services you're providing. And then this material cost number here is what's the material cost for providing the service. And so we have set up here in this equation for a lot of these, what we're doing is we're taking the average fee and multiplying by a percentage. So in this example, we did times 0.2. So in other words, your material cost is 20% of your fee. In this example, it's 35% of your fee. And so you can adjust those as needed. This right here, average collections after contractual allowances discounts. So this would be like what you're actually receiving. So this might be your sticker price, but then if you bill to insurance, maybe they don't pay 100% of that, right? Or maybe you offer a cash pay discount or something like that. So this is kind of what do you actually collect of those fees, right? So that's it on the revenue side. On the expense side, we just have some standard operating expenses here. So your accounting expense, insurance, maybe your rent, software, office supplies. Maybe you have some kind of startup legal and consulting fees that you're paying. And then maybe you have a kind of other general and admin expense of 5% of revenue here that starts in year 2. That this is just kind of a catch-all that, hey, we know we'll have other operating expenses, general and admin expenses. So we put that in as a percentage of revenue here. So you can add different expenses and change them to be either a fixed dollar amount, a percent of revenue, or a per employee expense. When you put in something as a percentage of revenue, so if I wanted to change utilities and internet to a percentage of revenue, what you want to make sure you do, if we think that's going to be 2% of revenue, you want to enter in 0.02. 0.02, that's how you would get 2%, okay? So just want to clarify how the template works there. And then this is really the last input tab. It's the salaries and dividends tab. So here we can enter in a provider here. So we've got dermatologists, we've got it categorized in the physician category. And here you can set an annual minimum salary. You can add employer taxes, benefits, what month that salary will start. So we're saying this dermatologist is starting in month 1, but if we look at, let's say we're going to add a nurse practitioner, and the nurse practitioner is going to start in month 6. Okay. So we've got the dermatologist here starting in month 1, ending in month 60. This is a 60-month model, so that just means throughout the life of this financial model, this person will be here. You can set the number of that particular employee. So we're just saying 1, but a good example of, let's say you had 2 front desk people that you were hiring at the same time for the same amount. You could just put 2 here, and then that would apply. It would, double up that expense. And then the last thing I really want to point out here is that you can do this variable compensation. And I'm going to change this because it's actually not a bonus. This is it's kind of an either or. So the way this works is this is your annual minimum salary for any position here where you have a percent of production that's going to be variable compensation. The percent of anytime you have percentages listed here, what's going to happen in the model is it's going to check to see what number ends up being larger. So is 150,000 monthly, or annualized salary, is that higher? If so, then that's the number we use for the salary that month. Or what we do here is we say, okay, this person is going to, and it probably makes more sense to say, let's say 50-50. So 50% of the total production is going to be by this dermatologist. And then they're going to receive variable compensation of 25% of their total production. So if revenue was in total for the month 100,000, and this dermatologist represented 50 of that, so they did 50,000 worth of production. Then take 25% of the 50,000, and I can't do that math. Shouldn't do that public math here. Let's just do it here. So 50,000 times the 25% here. 12,500. So that would in this scenario, the variable compensation for the month. So the model will check what's the model will 12,500, or whatever this annual minimum salary is. If the annual minimum salary monthly amount is larger, it will just apply this. If this variable comp structure is larger, it'll apply the variable comp. So hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions or need help customizing that, let me know. But you don't have to use this section, so you could just put zeros or just, delete these numbers here, and that would be just fine, and you can stick with this annual minimum salary structure that's a little bit simpler. We just know that oftentimes practices do some sort of, you're going to get this base, then once you surpass that amount of production, you're going to get some percentage of your production, whichever is larger. Okay, so that brings us back to where we started. And you can see, based on the assumptions that we had built into the model, you can see, revenue of $727,000 in the first year with a small net loss in the first year as you're ramping up. And then, over time, as you add patients, you add additional dermatologists, additional staff, you can see revenue ramps up, and then over time, ultimately, your net income reaching nearly $500,000 here by the end of year 5. So yeah, you're going to want to play around with this. The main thing you're going to want to take a look at, I would say, is once you're done, come to the cash flow statement here. And you want to look at the cash at the beginning of period row right here. And just make sure this never goes below 0. So look at each month here. Make sure it never drops below 0. It starts to come back up here and turn the corner and start to increase here. And it does kind of ebb and flow because you're hiring new people. And so then it starts to go down for a little bit and then you grow into that. So that's why you see some variability in this. But you'll just want to make sure, cash at the beginning of the period never goes below 0. If it doesn't, then, you're at least solvent and, could probably present that to an SBA lender without accidentally embarrassing yourself by presenting something with negative cash flow or negative cash. So that is the process. Again, we've put a link to the template in the description of the video below. And as I promised, as a thank you for sticking around to the very end here, we have put a link to a form that you can fill out. If you fill out that form, it's going to send you our most up-to-date coupon code that you can use to get a discount on this particular template as our thank you for sticking around. So if you found that to be helpful at all, we'd love your feedback in the comments. Give us a comment or give us a thumbs up. Helps our channel here on YouTube. So we appreciate that. And if you have any questions at all, please reach out to support@projectionhub.com. Thanks.